Hi there, my name is Anselma, and this is how I discovered my father left $2 million to my sister in his will while I was given absolutely nothing. No explanation, no warning, just quietly erased. But the truth is, that was only the beginning. They emptied my bank accounts, took out loans in my name, spread stories about me behind my back, and when I finally stood up for myself, they turned around and said I was the problem. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a pattern, something that had been forming silently for years. So what would you do if the people who raised you slowly turned you into a stranger in your own story? Would you stay quiet, or would you fight back? Let's talk about it. The document didn't seem important at first, just another envelope tossed into a pile of tax papers, warranties, and random mail. I had come over to help my dad organize everything, like I always did every October. It was a calm Saturday afternoon in Fort Collins, the kind where the trees look like they're glowing with shades of gold and rust. My parents' house, warm, cluttered, full of memories, smelled like old candles and cinnamon, familiar, almost comforting. I had no idea I was about to be blindsided. As I flipped through the stack, searching for property tax forms, my eyes caught a title that made my hands pause: Last Will and Testament. For a second, I just stared at it, because wills aren't something you casually stumble across like menus or coupons. But before I could stop myself, I opened it, curiosity pushing past hesitation. It only took 3 lines to knock the air out of me. Everything, every dollar, every part of the house, every asset they owned was going to Ver. Not one mention of me. Not even a passing line about the years I helped keep that house running when Dad's back injury left him unable to work, or the groceries I brought after Mom's surgery, or the late-night calls where I walked them step by step through online banking. Nothing. I kept reading, convinced I had missed something. Maybe another page, maybe a note hidden somewhere, something that would acknowledge me. But there was nothing, except one hollow sentence near the end. We leave this with equal love for both our daughters. Equal love? I almost laughed at that. I felt ridiculous for even standing there holding it. I set the document back down, carefully, without reacting. A few minutes later, Dad walked back into the room, holding his coffee like nothing had changed, and asked, "Did you find the tax papers yet?" "Not yet," I said, forcing a smile so tight it almost hurt my face. This wasn't the moment to confront him. I needed time to think, to process, to understand. And maybe part of me still hoped there was a reason, some explanation that would make it make sense, when I wasn't sitting there with the weight of it pressing against my chest like something sharp and unforgiving. But 2 days later, the second hit came. My phone rang while I was at work, reviewing a client's retirement plan. It was Mom. "Hi, sweetheart," she said softly. "Listen, we're a little short this month. Could you send us $1,500 just to cover utilities and a few other things?" I paused for barely a moment before saying yes, of course. I transferred the money during my lunch break. It wasn't unusual. They had asked before, and I had always helped without question. But later that night, while I was half watching a crime documentary on Netflix and scrolling through Instagram, I saw Ver's story. She was at La Mer, that overpriced spa near Boulder, wrapped in robes, surrounded by candles, wine, massage oils, soft lighting, and the caption, "Self-care is the best care, pre-holiday reset." I tapped through more photos. Sushi, champagne, everything indulgent, everything expensive. And suddenly my stomach dropped. So that's where the money went. At first I tried to convince myself it was coincidence, bad timing. But deep down I knew better. I knew exactly what it meant. They weren't just overlooking me anymore. They were using me. And I said nothing. Not yet. Instead, I sat with it. I let the realization settle in that I was the dependable one, the one they could rely on, not because I was loved, but because I was useful. That night, I drove home in silence, the sky already dark before evening fully settled, the cold creeping through my coat. When I got inside my apartment, I poured a glass of wine and sat on the couch. Across from me, on the shelf, was a photo of me and Vera's kids, wearing matching dresses, arms around each other. The frame had a small crack in the corner. I had meant to fix it before now. Now I just stared at it, and for the first time I let myself feel everything. Because this wasn't about money. It never was. It was about being erased. 3 days passed after finding the will, after seeing the spa posts, after that realization settled in like something permanent. I didn't say anything to anyone. Not to my parents, not even to Ver. I went through my routine, I showed up to work, I smiled at clients, answered emails, even laughed when my coworker Trina joked about her chaotic Thanksgiving plans. but every reaction felt automatic, like muscle memory. Inside, I was unraveling, quietly. It was a rainy Wednesday evening when my dad called. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, still in my work clothes, holding a cup of tea that had already gone cold. The window beside me blurred with soft rain, and the room felt dim, like everything else. "Hi, Dad," I said, my voice flatter than I intended. He didn't ask how I was, didn't bother with small talk. He went straight to it. "About what you saw last weekend," his tone too controlled, too practiced. "It's more complicated than you think." I stayed silent, letting him continue. "Your mother and I thought it was best. There has always had a harder time. You've always been strong, independent." And there it was, the same story, the same justification. "You're stable, she's not. You don't need it like she does." I pressed the phone closer, my jaw tightening until it hurt. I closed my eyes, feeling the pressure build behind them. "So that's your reasoning?" I asked quietly. "It's not about love, Anselma. You know we love you," he said. I almost laughed, but it would have come out wrong. Too bitter, too broken. "We're done here," I replied softly, and hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I just sat there, letting the meaning settle. Not needed, not chosen, not included. I had gone from daughter to utility, something reliable, quiet, and easily replaced. Later that night, I pulled an old shoebox from my closet. Inside were scrapbooks, birthday cards, letters, and little notes from school. I flipped through them slowly, tracing memories that now felt distant. One photo stood out, Vere crying after losing a spelling bee in 6th grade. I remembered that day. I had come second, and Dad told me to let her win just once, because she was sensitive and I was mature enough to understand. And I nodded. I always nodded. In high school, I got into the state honors program, but at the dinner celebration, all the attention went to Vere getting a C+ in algebra. "She worked so hard," Mom had said proudly. No one even mentioned me. And still, I convinced myself being the strong one meant I was valued. I wore that label like armor, thinking it meant respect, when really it just meant they felt comfortable overlooking me. The next evening, while I was making dinner, my phone rang. It was my cousin Claire. We rarely talked beyond birthdays and occasional social media comments. I answered, curious. "Hey," she said hesitantly. "I just wanted to check on you. I heard things were tense at your parents' place." "Tense?" I repeated carefully. "Yeah, my mom mentioned something about the will. She said I didn't want to pry, but Uncle Cadrian always used to say you were doing fine on your own, that Vere needed more help." I paused, holding the spatula in midair. "So he's been saying that for a while?" I asked quietly. Claire sighed. "Honestly, yeah, I think they thought they were being fair. There was no explanation that could fix it. They hadn't forgotten me. They had chosen not to include me. It was intentional." I finished cooking, plated the food, and left it untouched on the counter. I wasn't hungry anymore. That night, I stood in front of the gallery wall in my hallway, filled with framed moments, vacations, birthdays, holidays. I stared at a picture of me with my parents at Niagara Falls. Then slowly, I took it down. One by one, I removed every photo that included them. I didn't destroy them. I didn't tear them apart. I just placed them in a box and slid it under my bed. I needed space. I needed silence. I needed something that didn't echo their voices every time I looked around. I picked up my journal, the pages still faintly scented with lavender from a sachet I had tucked inside months ago. I opened to a blank page and wrote, "What do you call a family that never really saw you?" A week passed, and on the surface, nothing changed. I still went to work, still answered emails, still smiled politely at people in the elevator, but inside I felt disconnected, like I was watching myself from a distance. It was a Sunday morning when I opened Instagram without thinking. I sat by the window, coffee in hand, watching sunlight push through the clouds without warmth, bright but cold like a spotlight. Vere had posted a new photo, throwback with my rock, my everything, dad goals. It was her and my father standing by the lake near Estes Park, smiling like something out of a postcard. But something felt wrong. It took me a second to notice the empty space behind his shoulder, an awkward crop, a piece missing. I knew that photo. I had it too. I pulled out my backup drive and opened the folder labeled Family Photos. When I found the original and clicked it open, there I was, standing on the other side of him, smiling like I belonged. The original had 3 people. The one she posted had 2. They hadn't just left me out emotionally, they had literally cut me out. I stared at the screen, my hands still on the keyboard, my coffee growing cold beside me. For a long time, I didn't move. I just looked at the difference between truth and what they chose to show. And then I let out a quiet laugh, one that didn't carry any warmth. Later that day, I opened another folder. Milestones, graduation, promotions, birthdays. I scrolled through image after image, noticing patterns I had never paid attention to before. Photos where I stood just outside the frame, where eyes passed over me, where conversations happened around me like I wasn't really there. And slowly, memory after memory started to shift. I remembered my college graduation, how I'd won a full ride to an Ivy League, and how at the family dinner, all anyone talked about was Ver landing her first job interview. Not the job, the interview. "You're the strong one," Mom had said that night. "You don't need the spotlight. You shine on your own." At the time, it felt like love. Now it sounded like dismissal, like she was saying, "Don't expect anything. You already give too much." I opened a drawer and found one of the photo albums from when we were kids. Inside, a picture of the 4 of us at the Grand Canyon. Everyone smiling. But now I noticed Dad's arm was around Ver, not me. Mom's hand rested on her shoulder. I stood next to them, smiling just the same, but not touched, not claimed. Maybe it had always been this way. Maybe I just didn't want to see it. By late afternoon, the sun had dipped lower behind the apartment buildings, and I sat at my desk flipping through those photos over and over, looking for something I'd missed, hoping for one image where I felt chosen. I didn't find one. Instead, I opened my email, not to send anything, just to type subject, "When you erased me." I stared at the blinking cursor for several minutes before I started writing. I didn't know if I'd ever send it. That didn't matter. I just needed the words to exist somewhere outside my body, because now I knew they weren't just choosing her, they were rewriting a family without me in it. Wednesday came with drizzle and bone cold. I wrapped my scarf tighter as I walked through the parking structure and into my office building. Our floor smelled like burnt coffee and fluorescent lights. I liked the routine here. Numbers didn't play favorites, forecasts didn't pretend, spreadsheets didn't crop you out of memories. I was halfway through reviewing a client's portfolio, 2 monitors glowing in front of me, my attention zoned in, when the internal line rang. I rarely got calls on that one. I paused, pressed the speaker button. And Selma, it was Lanny at reception. Her voice trembled. "Your family's here. They say it's urgent." I sat still for a beat, the word family rattling in my ribs. "Did they say why?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "They won't say, but they won't leave." My hand hovered over the mouse for a moment, then I stood. "I'll come down." As I descended in the elevator, my reflection in the mirrored walls looked calm, unbothered. But inside, my stomach curled into knots. They weren't supposed to come here. This was my space, professional, clean, untouched by the mess I'd left in my personal life. The elevator doors opened to the lobby, and there they were. Dad, arms crossed, face tight with expectation. Mom in her familiar beige coat and faux sympathetic smile. And Ver, of course. Perfect hair, perfect posture, eyes scanning the room like she was the guest of honor. They stood in a line like some kind of intervention. I approached slowly. They turned in unison. "You can't ignore us forever," Dad said first, skipping any pretense of affection. Mom's voice was soft, like she was trying to soothe a wild animal. "Sweetheart, we just want to talk. Don't make this bigger than it is." I took a breath, steady but low. "You already made it bigger," I said, eyes locked on her. "When you decided I wasn't your daughter anymore." There was a flicker behind her eyes, discomfort, guilt, hard to say. She adjusted her scarf and looked at Dad, who didn't flinch. "You're being dramatic," finally chimed in. "It's just a will. You act like it's some kind of betrayal." I laughed, sharp, humorless. "You don't get to rewrite the narrative just because you're comfortable in it." "I didn't ask for anything," she muttered. "No," I replied. "You just took it when it was offered." I turned and walked away, not giving them the drama they came for. Back at my desk, I closed the blinds, sat down, and tried to pretend it was just another afternoon. I managed maybe 10 minutes of focus before the alert pinged on my phone. "Your account ending in **38 has been debited $2,500. My breath caught. I opened the banking app, heart racing. The transaction came from the joint account I had set up for Mom years ago, back when she struggled to manage her medical bills. I'd forgotten it even existed. I scrolled. It was a wire transfer to an upscale event venue. I called the bank immediately. The customer service rep was kind, but the response was clinical. Unfortunately, since she's a legal co-holder, the transaction is authorized. I hung up slowly, my hands cold despite the heat in the room. That money wasn't just stolen, it was assumed, taken, like it still belonged to them. They'd shown up in my workplace, demanded a conversation, and then behind my back reached into my pocket. I opened the group chat we hadn't used in half a year. Their names stared back at me in the top bar. Kadrayan, Sorrel, there. I typed slowly, deliberately. This is the last time you take anything from me without my consent. And I hit send. 2 days later, I was in the kitchen making tea when my phone rang. Unknown number. Local area code, but not familiar. I almost didn't answer, assuming it was spam. But something made me pick up. Hello. Is this Anselma Elmore? Yes, speaking. This is Samantha from Equifax Fraud and Identity Services. We're calling to verify a recent co-signature on a personal line of credit. $12,000. Issued last week under your name. The words barely registered at first, then they hit. I didn't co-sign anything, I said. A brief pause followed by quiet typing on the other end. The application listed your full name and an older residential address. The secondary signer is Sorrel Elmore. My grip tightened on the counter. Steam rose steadily from the kettle behind me. That's my mother. I see, she replied, her tone shifting. So you're not authorizing this transaction? No, absolutely not. That's identity fraud. We'll open an investigation and email you the formal dispute documents, she said. But please note, because the signer is a known relative and may have had access to previous records, this could be a lengthy process. Understood, I muttered, already feeling the ground tilt beneath me. I ended the call and just sat down, staring at nothing. 5 full minutes passed before I could even move. The betrayal didn't just sting, it stunned. She hadn't just stepped over a line, she'd crushed it. No text this time, no carefully worded message. I called her. My hands were shaking slightly as the phone rang. She picked up on the 3rd ring, her voice was soft, light, like she'd been waiting for me. Sweetheart, she said, like nothing had happened. You used my name to apply for a loan? I said evenly. You didn't just cross a line, you buried it. She sighed, but didn't deny it. We needed it. Things are tight right now, and you wouldn't have said yes. No, I wouldn't have, I snapped. Because it's my name, my credit, my identity. You forged it. It's not forgery, it's family. Families help each other. No, families ask. Families respect. They don't steal. And I hung up. I didn't yell, didn't cry. I just sat there, alone in my kitchen, letting the silence harden around me. If I'd had any illusions left, they ended there. An hour later, my phone lit up again. A text from Ver. Seriously? Doing all this over a will? Grow up. Then a group message from Mom. We've done so much for you. This is how you repay us? No message from Dad. Just a reaction on her text, of course. No guilt, no shame. Just deflection. They weren't hiding anymore. They saw themselves as victims. I was the villain for pushing back, for setting limits, for finally saying no. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened Facebook. My page had been quiet for years. Some old work photos.
The occasional birthday post, a few likes here and there. But that night, I wrote something real. No accusations, no drama, just facts. For years, I gave to my family. I paid for things, kept quiet, and told myself it was love. I ignored the imbalance. I convinced myself that loyalty meant silence. Recently, I found out I was removed from the family will, without discussion or explanation. Just gone. Then I discovered a loan taken out in my name without my permission, co-signed by someone I trusted. I've stayed quiet long enough. They haven't. So here's where I stand. I wasn't just written out of the will. I was written out of the family long before. And I hit post. No name-calling, no revenge, just truth. I didn't check for likes, didn't scroll to see who saw it. That wasn't the point. The point was I had spoken. Let the truth breathe. Let it live where silence used to be. I was at work early that day. The coffee was burnt, my eyes were heavy, and for once, my mind was quiet. Not peaceful, just suspended. I hadn't posted anything since the Facebook fallout. No response from Dad. Verisa vanished. But the silence didn't feel like a break. It felt like pressure, like something was winding up behind the scenes. Around midday, an email popped into my inbox. Reception, you have a letter hand-delivered from the law offices of Henry and Clark, signed and sealed. I froze. My chest tightened. I left my desk and headed downstairs. Lanny handed me the envelope with a cautious look, the kind you give someone when you know it's bad, but can't say so out loud. The letterhead told me everything. Back at my desk, I sat down, stared at the thick envelope for a second, then opened it. 3 pages, heavy, glossy paper. The tone was cold, precise. You are being formally warned against sharing private family information with malicious intent on public platforms. The client, Sorrel Elmore, my mother. I read that line again. She hadn't called, hadn't written. No apology, no explanation. Just lawyers, threats, paper over pain. She wasn't trying to speak to me. She wanted to silence me. They weren't negotiating. They were drawing a line. I read the entire thing, slowly, twice. I didn't flinch. I just pulled out the office scanner, fed in the pages, and saved the files in a folder labeled defense. No reply, no panic, just evidence. That night, I sat by the window with a glass of water. Snow was falling hard now, dancing under the orange glow of the street lamps. The city felt distant, wrapped in hush. I was drained, but sharp. The fog was gone. Then my phone lit up. A message from Na, an old college friend I hadn't spoken to in months. Hey, did you actually say those things about your mom on that call? My stomach dropped. What call? I texted back. She replied with an audio file. I hesitated, then hit play. My voice, but wrong. Off, clipped sentences, choppy edits. The rhythm was weird, the tone mismatched. A manipulative liar who doesn't deserve the title of mother. I never said that, ever. The call was a Frankenstein version of something real. Our last conversation, chopped up and rearranged. It was me, but not me. Someone had stitched together a character assassination. I messaged her back immediately. That's fake, badly edited. I have the full call saved, start to finish. Na didn't answer right away. I could picture her staring at her phone, caught between what she heard and what she knew. That's what they were counting on, doubt, confusion. They didn't need to prove I was a liar, just enough to make me look unstable. I pulled up the files, audio backups of everything. The full call with Mom, the one with Farisa. I had them all, documented, date-stamped, saved for reasons just like this. In the quiet, I opened a new doc and started writing. A timeline. From the will, to the account transfers, to the gaslighting, to this. Every twist, every threat, every trap. I added receipts, screenshots, dates. I opened folders labeled everything, cross-referenced timestamps, built the scaffolding of a truth they didn't want seen. Outside, the snow had coated the fire escape, thick and undisturbed. They thought sending lawyers would scare me. They thought splicing my voice would break me. They were wrong. I wasn't going to panic. I wasn't going to yell into the void. I was going to build a case. They called me dangerous for telling the truth. Wait until they saw what I could do with proof. My apartment windows were fogged from the inside, blurred by the condensation that came from days of refusing to open them. The radiator hummed, but the chill had settled beneath my skin and into the soft tissue of my patience. It was the kind of cold that didn't just touch you. It stayed. I was stirring oatmeal mindlessly when I saw the notification pop up on my phone. A neighbor I barely knew had sent a screenshot. No caption, just the image. Fort Collins Family Circle, public post. When a daughter turns on her own mother for a few dollars. Shameful. My stomach didn't drop, it locked. The first comment, Mrs. Kenna, one of Mom's longtime church friends. She'd braided my hair for a bake sale when I was 9. I raised 3 girls. None of them would ever disrespect me like that. Prayers to Sorrel. And then the one that should have surprised me but still felt like a slap. Farisa, no matter what, I'll always choose love over greed. I froze mid-bite. The oatmeal turned cold in my bowl. It wasn't just the words that hit. It was what came after. Or rather, what didn't. The people who had quietly liked my Facebook post 2 weeks ago. The ones who'd messaged me in private who said they understood, none of them showed up. Now not one. Public defense, not one counter-comment. Their silence buzzed louder than any insult. By afternoon, the group chat with the family had once again lit up. This time it wasn't passive-aggressive. It was direct. From Dad. If you really loved us, you'd stop airing our business. You're not being a daughter, you're being a problem like I. I was mowed on a wall, a leak under the sink, an inconvenience to be patched over and repainted. I didn't cry, I didn't curse. I let out a laugh, dry, hollow, as if it came from somewhere else in the room and not my own body. And then I reached for my journal, the one I hadn't touched in 3 days, and wrote the clearest line I'd ever penned. I wasn't being a daughter, I was being a donor. Not family, just function. That evening, as I was organizing receipts, Clea called. Her voice was hushed, like she wasn't supposed to be making the call, like the truth itself needed to be whispered. And Selma, I need to tell you something. I should have said it earlier. I sat on the edge of my bed, the phone pressed to my ear like it might burn. Your mom knew about the will from the beginning. She told the family it was for the best, that you wouldn't understand. The room fell quiet. Even my heartbeat seemed to step aside. She told everyone not to bring it up with you, said it would only cause trouble. I didn't ask for proof. I didn't doubt her. I didn't need to. Because I'd always suspected that Mom stood in the hallway between betrayal and protection, that she might have been manipulated. But this, she wasn't caught in the crossfire. She was holding the rifle. I thanked Clea. I don't remember the tone of my voice, but I do remember hanging up and sitting there, still, my hands folded in my lap, like I was waiting for something. Judgment, perhaps, or maybe the sudden weightlessness that comes when a foundation completely collapses. But no such freedom arrived. Later that week, on my way home from work, I stopped by the Safeway to pick up a few things. The air outside was sharp with wind, snowflakes dancing sideways under the parking lot lights. That's when I saw her, Vera, standing next to the flower stand, holding her phone like it was an award. She glanced up, saw me, and smirked. "So," she said, brushing snow from her shoulder, "how's your little pity parade going?" There was no audience here, no church members, no family friends, just her, just me. She waited for me to snap, to defend, to make a scene. But I didn't. I stepped closer, met her eyes, and said calmly, "You may have their will, but I have their truth, and I'm about to make it public." Her smirk wavered, just a twitch, but enough for me. I walked inside without another glance. She didn't follow. I picked up a carton of milk, paid in cash, and stepped back into the cold. This stung my cheeks, but I didn't flinch. They had tried to bury me, but they'd forgotten something important. I had grown roots in concrete. 2 mornings after seeing Vera outside Safeway, I woke up before sunrise. The sky outside my bedroom window was a soft and different gray. Still, the cold felt different that day. Less numbing, more clarifying, like something in the air had shifted. Or maybe it was just me. At 7:12 a.m., while sipping from my chin-chipped ceramic mug, the one I kept out of stubbornness, I saw the email notification on my phone. Subject, about the Elmore estate. It was from Thorne, not some anonymous attorney. Thorne had been with our family for years. He knew our birthdays, our messes, our milestones. He drafted the first version of my dad's will. Now he was writing to me, not as a family friend, but as a lawyer with concerns. "And Selma," the message read, "I have reason to believe the second version of your father's will contains significant discrepancies. Please review the attached documents at your earliest convenience. We need to speak." I opened the file, side-by-side scans. One dated a few months before Dad's health went downhill. My name clearly listed. A third split marked for a local animal shelter. Vera still got the bulk, but I was there. Then the second document, recent, abrupt, and cold. Vera's name stood alone. I didn't need to squint to catch the differences. The signature flowed differently. The ink was newer. The notarization stamp lacked its usual county watermark and the date. It was the same weekend Dad was hospitalized with pneumonia and hallucinating. He couldn't even hold a spoon then, let alone a pen. I stared at the screen, then hit forward to my own attorney. No emotion, just action. Later that afternoon, I met Thorne at his office, a modest building downtown, all warm wood and an old brass. He offered coffee. I declined. "I can't officially advise you unless retained," he said. "But off the record, this smells like coercion or at the very least a misrepresentation. Also, assigning full estate rights to one party without the spouse's co-signature violates Colorado joint property statutes." I folded my hands in my lap. "So what happens next?" He hesitated. "An inquiry has already been opened. Someone sent documents anonymously to the State Legal Review Board. I assume it wasn't you." I didn't answer, because it didn't matter who'd opened the door. The truth has a way of walking in uninvited once there's a crack. That night, I lit one candle and sat at my desk. I didn't write a long post. No hashtags, no callouts, no fire. Just a sentence. When they tried to erase me from paper, I wrote myself back in ink. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't enable comments. 3 hours later, my phone buzzed. A message from Vera. "This is getting out of hand. Take it down. You're humiliating us." I read it once, then again, and then I placed the phone screen down on the table and kept the candle lit. I didn't feel the urge to reply. For the first time, their discomfort wasn't my responsibility. Their silence wasn't suffocating me. It was shielding them from the weight of everything I finally had the power to say. Because here's the thing. No one tells you. Silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's the final word. Closure isn't always a door slammed. Sometimes it's just you walking away. 3 weeks passed. The snow that once muffled the sidewalks had receded into slush, and even that had dried now, leaving behind faint salt stains on the curbs. The mornings no longer bit at my fingers. Instead, they brushed past them, offering something softer, like the world was thawing alongside me. I hadn't followed the court proceedings, not in real time, not with popcorn or commentary. I didn't need to sit through transcripts or refresh court dockets. I got a summary from Thorne, concise, professional, devoid of sentiment. Cadrian Elmore has been summoned for further inquiry regarding estate regularities. Sorrel Elmore declined to offer a statement. No apology, no confession, no grand unraveling. Just silence, which, oddly enough, felt louder than words. There's a kind of peace that comes when the noise finally dies down, even if it's just from people giving up the act. That morning, instead of diving into social feeds or the endless scroll of takes and hashtags, I grabbed my coat and walked 2 blocks to a small corner cafe I hadn't stepped into in years. The bell above the door still jingled like a memory. The owner, Marta, still wore her hair in that loose silver bun. She blinked, then went up. "And Selma," she said, "where have you been hiding, girl?" I smiled. "Busy rediscovering air." She chuckled and poured me a black coffee without asking. "It's on the house," she said. "You always tip too much." I took my mug to a seat by the window and watched people drift by. Bundled couples, grocery bags, toddlers in puffer jackets. Life didn't wait for the dust to settle. It just kept moving. Maybe I could too. I opened my laptop, not to work, not to scroll, but to write. For the first time in a long time, I logged into my old blog, a relic from college days when I still believed my words might echo somewhere. I titled the post, "Some Truths Don't Need an Audience, Just Air to Breathe." And I wrote. I wrote about grief that doesn't come from death, about losing people who still breathe the same air but feel galaxies away, about how silence from the people you love can feel worse than shouting from strangers.
I didn't name them, didn't point fingers or rehash old wounds. It wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about breath, my own, how I learned to exhale without waiting for someone else's approval. That afternoon, back at the office, I was organizing files when the front desk buzzed. "There's someone here to see you," my assistant said. She didn't have an appointment. It was Mrs. Delaney. I hadn't seen her in years. Wrinkles had deepened around her eyes, but her posture was upright, determined. "You probably don't remember me," she said, her voice kind but weathered. "You helped me save my home. I never forgot." I did remember. A mess of paperwork, a last-minute refinance, a handwritten thank you card. But I hadn't expected her to walk in years later just to say this. "Thank you," she said again, "for being steady, for not letting me give up." She left after 10 minutes, nothing dramatic, but when the door shut behind her, I felt something unfamiliar flood my chest. Not pride, not validation, just peace. That night, I got home to find a small cream envelope in my mailbox, no return address. My name was written in soft blue ink, careful cursive. Inside, one line. "You didn't deserve any of it. I'm sorry, Claire." No explanation, no defense, just those words. I didn't text her, didn't forward it to anyone. I folded the note and slid it into the back of my journal, not to forgive, not to forget, just to witness it. Because sometimes acknowledgement matters more than apology. Later, I lit a candle and turned off every device I owned. No background noise, no screen glare, just me. I opened my journal and wrote one final entry. I am not the forgotten daughter. I am the one who remembered myself. I closed the book slowly. The apartment was still, but for the first time it wasn't empty, because I wasn't either. I stood by the window, watching the city breathe in quiet pulses of light. My reflection stared back, tired but whole. I wasn't waiting for anyone to show up for me anymore. I had, and that was enough. When your family tries to define your worth by how much you give, how quiet you stay, or how little you ask for, walk away, with your dignity intact.
The silence you once thought was strength might have just been fear dressed as loyalty. And when you finally speak, when you finally reclaim your voice, they won't know what to do with the sound. I didn't get justice in the way I first imagined. There was no dramatic apology, no overnight healing. But I got something better: clarity, freedom, and self-respect. And sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's everything. Peace doesn't always arrive with closure. It often comes from choosing yourself, even when no one else does. If you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or made to feel like your existence was inconvenient, know this: you're not alone and you're not invisible. Not here. Not in this space. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been pushed aside by the people you trusted most? Did you stay silent, or did you finally speak up? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story touched you, drop a 1 in the chat, or tell me where you're watching from. I read every single one. And if this video didn't resonate, I'd still love to hear why. What would you have done differently? What does healing look like to you? Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you want more real stories that don't sugarcoat family, identity, or healing. Your voice matters here, and so does your experience. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, remember, they can try to erase you, but they can't erase your truth. And one day that truth will speak louder than their silence ever did.